He wipes blood from my mouth like it's soup I spilled. I'm Danielle, 36, a waitress, from Greenville, South Carolina. The gauze stings when the nurse presses it against my lip. I flinch, not because of the pain, but because I know what's coming next. Rick will say something sweet, something charming, and everyone in the room will forget what I look like right now. She slipped, he says, rubbing my shoulder gently. I told her to be careful mopping. His voice is soft, laced with concern. The nurse nods, jotting something down, but her eyes linger on my face a little longer than necessary. She doesn't believe him. I can tell. Rick squeezes my hand. You okay, baby? I nod. It's easier than talking. The words feel stuck in my throat, like splinters I'm too afraid to swallow. The nurse presses the thermometer under my tongue. I glance around the ER, blinding overhead lights, machines humming low, the faint smell of antiseptic and latex. A man in a wheelchair moans softly a few beds over. Someone's baby cries. I can barely hear it over the pounding in my head. I taste copper. Rick stands now, pacing beside the bed like a man burdened by love. She was trying to clean the kitchen and fell. It's the second time this month, he tells the nurse, shaking his head like, I'm a clumsy child, not a grown woman with broken ribs and a busted mouth. The nurse hums softly but doesn't smile. Her badge reads T. Caldwell. I memorize it. I've learned to remember small things. Small things make you feel like you still exist. Rick leans in and wipes the corner of my mouth. He uses the same tenderness he once used to feed me soup when I had the flu. I look away. A camera blinks red in the corner of the hallway. He doesn't know I've seen it. The nurse adjusts my IV drip, then leans close to my ear and whispers, You don't have to say anything now, but I'm here. Her voice cracks something inside me, not loudly but just enough to hear the echo. Rick returns with a plastic cup of water and a napkin. He sits at the edge of the bed, gently brushing hair from my forehead. We'll be home soon, he whispers, just loud enough for the nurse to hear. He makes it sound like a promise, like something warm, but it's not. It's a sentence. I close my eyes and pretend to sleep. The nurse lingers a little longer before moving on to the next patient. The moment she turns her back, Rick leans in again. His breath is warm against my cheek. You scared me, he says. Don't do that again. I stay still. I know the rules. Don't cry. Don't speak unless he asks. Smile when the nurse looks over. Lie if they push. He'll make it worse if I don't. The nurse hands me a discharge form. I try to read it, but the letters blur. I sign anyway. Rick's already holding my coat. Let's get you home, he says. I glance at Nurse Caldwell. Her eyes meet mine for a second too long. She knows, and now I know she knows. That might be enough. Rick wheels me through the ER hallway. He makes a joke about how terrible the hospital food smells. A receptionist chuckles. Another nurse smiles politely. He tells them I'm the toughest woman he's ever met. My hand throbs. My lip is still bleeding under the gauze. But I smile, because they are watching. She's always been clumsy, he says to no one in particular. But she's got a heart like a lion. I clench my jaw. I want to scream, not just because it hurts, but because he makes it sound like love. We pass under the red blinking camera again. I lift my head just enough to look into the lens. My lip is split, my cheek is purple. But I hold that camera's gaze. I want it to see me, all of me. Not the girl he describes, not the clumsy wife, not the accident. Just me, a woman who didn't fall, a woman who was pushed. I don't say a word. I don't have to. He looks like a rescuer, but I'm the one disappearing. He fooled the nurses, but I think one of them saw me flinch. 2 weeks earlier, I was flipping pancakes on the griddle, the sizzle blending into the morning chatter of regulars asking for more coffee or extra butter. My apron smelled like syrup and burnt toast, but it felt like armor. In that diner, I was someone else, someone not yet broken. Rick had dropped me off like he always did, with a travel mug in one hand and a peck on the cheek, his other hand pressing too hard on my back like I might run. Don't forget, we have dinner tonight, he said through his smile, the kind that fooled people. I nodded. He drove off, and I breathed easier. For 8 hours, I belonged to someone else's schedule. You're glowing today, said Tara, the hostess, grinning as she handed me a stack of menus. I wanted to laugh. Glowing. Maybe bruises shine when they're new. I worked the lunch shift without checking my phone. I didn't need to. I knew he'd be waiting right outside at 5:30, and he was. flowers on the dashboard, music low. He even opened the door for me. "See? I still remember how to date my wife," he said. I smiled, grateful for the quiet. We got home, and he cooked real food, not just frozen crap. He danced with me in the kitchen, spinning me slow, like in a movie. His hands were warm. His lips brushed my forehead. I remember thinking, maybe today will be okay. The fight started over something dumb. Money, bills, the bank not clearing something he expected. His voice didn't get loud. "That's the thing," Rick rarely shouted. He just changed temperature, from warm to freezing. "You spend like we have a second income," he muttered, placing the spatula down too neatly. "I told you I needed new shoes for work," I said, careful to keep my voice even. "So you think flipping pancakes justifies blowing $100? He asked, his tone flat. I turned away. I should have known better. The slap wasn't the worst part. It was the silence afterward, how he walked back to the stove and stirred the sauce like nothing happened. My cheek stung, my breath caught in my throat, and I stood frozen between the fridge and the counter. He didn't apologize, not right away. Instead, he served the food, sat across from me, and said, "Let's just eat before it gets cold." And I did. I chewed through the ache in my jaw. I swallowed with a smile. I even complimented the damn sauce. He always acted gentle right after he hit me. That night, he pulled the blanket over me, kissed my shoulder, and whispered, "I'm sorry, baby. Stress is a killer." I told myself the same thing. Stress, work, family, childhood trauma, everything except the truth. The next morning, I wore my hair low on one side. The bruise would fade. They always did. At the diner, I joked with customers and refilled coffee without flinching. Tara said I seemed tired. I told her I stayed up watching movies. "You're lucky," she said. "Rick's so romantic." I smiled. That was the moment I realized how much easier it was to lie than to explain. I started rationing the truth in teaspoons. At home, Rick noticed everything. When I changed the way I walked, when I flinched too fast, when I closed my phone screen too quickly. "You hiding something?" he'd ask, eyebrows raised. "Just scrolling memes," I'd answer. He never liked the internet. Said it gave women too many ideas. Some nights were better than others. He'd bring takeout and play old R&B songs. We'd sit on the couch, his head in my lap, his breath warm against my stomach. He would talk about wanting kids someday. Vacations. A beach house. Those moments were traps, baited with hope. The next time he struck me, it was because I asked him to lower his voice on a call. The phone hit the wall. Then his hand hit me. Open palm, no warning. I don't remember falling. I remember the tile being cold. I remember him crouching beside me, apologizing, checking my pulse like I was a patient, not his wife. I remember saying, "I'm okay," and not meaning it. The bruise that bloomed beneath my eye was different, deeper. It took longer to fade. I used frozen peas wrapped in a towel, told Tara I'd hit the kitchen shelf by accident. I even laughed when I said it. She didn't believe me, not really, but she didn't ask again. That was the last time anyone looked at me too long. Rick had started checking my call log. He said it was just curiosity, said he had nothing to hide, and neither should I. He started driving me to and from work every day, said it was safer. "The neighborhood's gone to hell," he said, even though nothing had changed. I stopped going to Tara's birthday dinners. I skipped out on family calls. I turned into a quiet version of myself, a ghost who smiled politely, served pancakes, and went straight home. I stopped writing. I used to keep a journal, full of lists and stories. One day, he found it and read a sentence aloud. "Sometimes I wonder if he loves me or owns me." He didn't say anything after. Just looked at me until I said, "It was a joke." He burned that page in the sink. Said I should try writing happy things. So I did. I started scribbling recipes instead. Lemon bars, cornbread, butter chicken, anything that sounded normal. Something someone loved would cook. My world got smaller each day. The couch, the kitchen, the sound of his footsteps, the click of a belt being pulled too fast. I measured my life in silences, his and mine. When I laughed at work, it felt like I was betraying him. When I cried at night, I did it quietly, biting the inside of my cheek so I wouldn't make noise. I thought I was strong because I hadn't left, because I was surviving. But now, looking back, I know better. Surviving isn't strength when your silence keeps someone else strong. It's just fear dressed in endurance. The day after the slap, he brought me a necklace. Said it reminded him of our honeymoon. "You remember that beach?" he asked, smiling. I nodded. There was no honeymoon. We got married in a courthouse with a broken vending machine outside. He said we'd do a real one later. "You're so beautiful," he whispered, clipping it around my neck. My collarbone ached. I wore it anyway. He kissed my forehead and went to work. I stared at the necklace in the mirror, my hand resting over it like a lock. That night, I made a copy of my ID. I don't know why. I didn't go anywhere, but I needed proof that I existed outside of him, that somewhere under the bruises I still had a name that belonged to me. Every bruise healed, but one, his name stamped under my skin. The pain faded, but the silence stayed thicker than blood. The next morning, Rick brought home flowers. Carnations, pink ones. He knew I hated carnations. I still said thank you. I arranged them in the chipped ceramic vase we got at a yard sale and placed them on the kitchen table, pretending they didn't smell like guilt. He leaned in to kiss me before I left for work. I flinched. Just a little. Enough for him to pause. "What's wrong?" he asked, brushing imaginary lint from my shoulder. I smiled too quickly. "Nothing. Just tired." "You sure?" His voice softened, but I could feel the heat behind it. Of course, that was the rule. Always be sure, always be fine. At the diner, Tara noticed the makeup. "New foundation?" she asked, eyeing the way it caked around my cheek. "Yup," I said, laughing. "Trying something fuller coverage." She nodded, but something in her face shifted. She didn't press. That was the thing with people who kind of know. They don't want to be right. I served coffee, cracked jokes, took orders like a machine built for service. At one point, a customer reached for the check and accidentally brushed my hand. I startled so hard I dropped a mug. It shattered on the tile. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded. Always nod. Always okay. When I got home, Rick had dinner ready. Pasta, garlic bread, candles. "To us," he said, lifting a glass. I clinked mine and forced a smile. He talked about his day, about how his boss was an idiot, and how the guys on the crew didn't respect him enough. I listened. That was my job, to listen, to nod, to be soft where the world had made him hard. After dinner, he pulled out his phone. "Smile," he said. I hesitated. "Come on," he insisted. I smiled. The photo showed up on his Instagram an hour later with the caption, "Date night with my queen." 57 likes. Comments like, "Couple goals" and "You two are perfect." I stared at it for 5 minutes. I didn't recognize the woman in the picture. That night, he didn't hit me. He was sweet, tender. He rubbed my shoulders, called me beautiful, made love to me like he was trying to convince himself he was good. But 2 nights later, it changed again. I forgot to defrost the chicken. That's all it took. He didn't scream. He didn't have to. He threw the frozen package at the sink, then he shoved me. Not hard, not like the others, but enough. Enough to make me stumble back against the counter. Enough to bruise the same place that was just starting to heal. I said sorry. Of course I did. He paced the kitchen like a lion in a cage, muttering about how hard he worked and how I don't appreciate anything. I stood still. I didn't cry. That made him angrier. "You think you're better than me now," he snapped. "You think that job makes you something?" "No," I said. "I don't think anything." He stopped pacing, walked up to me, stared. "Exactly," he said. "You don't think." Then he walked out. I exhaled. That was the win. He didn't hit me this time. I went to the bathroom and stared at my reflection. My face looked tired, hollow. My eyes didn't look like mine. I picked up my phone and took a photo of my thigh. The bruise was purple, blue at the edges. I saved it in a folder labeled groceries. I never opened that folder again, but I didn't delete it either. That was the first time I documented anything. It felt like a betrayal, not of Rick, but of myself. Like admitting the truth was some kind of sin. My sister called the next day. It had been a while. "You sound tired," she said. "Just long shifts," I replied. "Rick's good?" "Yeah," I lied. "Really good. You two always seemed solid." I wanted to tell her. I almost did. But then Rick came into the room and kissed the top of my head, smiling like we were on a movie set. I held the phone tighter. "Yeah," I said again. "Solid." We hung up, and I felt lighter. That was the trick. Small lies carried less weight than big truths. Rick started taking my phone at night. Just while we sleep, he said. No distractions. The first time he did it, I told myself it was cute. The third time, I stopped checking the time altogether. He installed an app that tracked my steps, said he was worried about my safety. I believed him. At least, I told myself I did. One day, I caught him reading through my texts. "Why are you going through my phone?" I asked, not even angry, just confused. "Because I love you," he said, like it was obvious. "Because I care." "That's not love," I whispered. He looked up, his face hardening. "Then maybe you don't know what love is." I didn't argue. He deleted 3 conversations with Tara. I never asked what they said. I stopped talking to her after that. Rick bought me a dress the next day, said it made me look radiant. I wore it to dinner. We took another photo, another caption, "Grateful for this woman." 89 likes. Comments like, "You two are goals," and "He treats you like a queen." I saved them all. Each comment like a needle under the skin. One morning, I woke up and he was gone. A note on the fridge, "Running errands. Be back soon. Love you." I walked to the mirror, lifted my shirt, and looked at the healing bruise on my side. Then I opened the folder on my phone. Groceries. The photos stared back. Me, but not me. Evidence. Maybe. Or maybe just reminders. I thought about sending them to someone. My sister. Tara. Even a helpline. I almost did. But I didn't. Instead, I stared at the screen until the battery died. I plugged it back in and kept going. I scrubbed the bathroom. I wiped the counters. I folded laundry. I kept living like nothing was wrong, because if I stopped, I might have to feel it, and I couldn't. Not yet. I took pictures so I wouldn't forget, but all they did was teach me how to lie better. The bruises faded, but the folder stayed unopened, untouched, waiting to be real. It started with a mug, a plain white coffee mug. I asked if I could pick up a few shifts at the diner, just 2, maybe 3 nights a week. "We need the extra money," I said. Rick was standing by the sink, rinsing out his cup. He didn't turn around. "Why?" he asked, voice neutral. "Because rent's due soon, and the car's acting up." He dried his hands with the dish towel, slow and deliberate. "I'm working," he said. "I cover us." "I know," I said. "Careful now." "I just thought—" He turned. "You thought?" There was no heat in his voice, but I felt the chill. I froze. He stepped closer, mug still in hand. "You think being around greasy tables and pervy old men till midnight makes you useful? It's not like that. You think I can't take care of you?" "No," I whispered. That was the wrong answer. He looked at me for a long second. Then he tightened his grip on the mug and smashed it against the counter. It didn't shatter into 1,000 dramatic pieces. Just broke clean in 2. The handle hit the tile. The rest stayed in his hand. He didn't throw it. He didn't yell. He placed the jagged piece on the counter and walked away. That night, I told Tara I couldn't pick up shifts. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Just tired," I said. "Always tired. Always fine." Rick brought home a bracelet 2 days later. Gold-plated fake diamonds too tight around my wrist. "To make up for being tense," he said. I nodded and wore it. It covered the bruise perfectly. That weekend, he took my phone while I showered. When I came out, he was sitting on the couch scrolling through it. "Why is Tara texting you after 10? He asked. "She always does. We send memes. She doesn't respect boundaries. She's my friend." "No," he said. "She's a problem." The next morning, I texted Tara and told her to stop messaging me. She didn't reply. I don't blame her. Rick started talking about moving somewhere quieter, smaller, away from toxic people. I asked if I could at least keep my job. He said nothing. The silence was an answer. One night, I said I was going to the store. He said, "Wait, I'll come." "I can walk," I offered. He laughed. "Why would you walk alone at night? It's 2 blocks. "Not safe," he said. "Too many weirdos out there." He grabbed his keys. We drove in silence. Inside the store, I picked up eggs, milk, bread. He picked up chips and a 6-pack. At checkout, the cashier, a boy barely 20, smiled at me. "Just polite," Rick noticed. In the car, he said, "You like being looked at?" He was just being nice. "I saw your face." "What face?" "Don't play dumb." He didn't speak the rest of the ride. When we got home, I put the groceries away while he drank on the couch. He didn't touch me that night, didn't even look at me. But that kind of silence had weight. It sat on my chest, heavy and loud. Over the next week, my world shrank. I no longer went anywhere alone. I stopped wearing makeup, stopped answering calls from my sister. I deleted Facebook. Too many distractions, he said. Let's just focus on us. The bracelet stayed on. The ring he gave me never left my finger. He wanted to get matching tattoos, like soul marks, he said. I didn't answer. He didn't ask again. One afternoon, while folding laundry, I found an old sweater I hadn't worn in months. It smelled like dust and lavender. It reminded me of a time I couldn't fully remember when I used to be loud, when I used to laugh without checking who was listening. I buried my face in it and cried quietly, so he wouldn't hear. That night, he apologized for being distant, said he was just stressed. That word again. Stress, the great excuse. He made me tea, rubbed my feet, told me I was the best thing that ever happened to him. You center me, he said. I nodded. That's what he needed, someone to orbit around him. Someone who never drifted too far. The next day, he told me I didn't need to work anymore. You've done enough, he said. Just focus on you. On us. We need the money, I said. I'll handle it, he replied. You've been tired lately. He kissed my forehead. Let me take care of you. I wanted to scream. Instead, I smiled and said, thank you. At the grocery store, he paid. At the gas station, he filled the tank. At home, he cooked. On the surface, he was the perfect husband. But every act of care came wrapped in ownership. My phone, my body, my time, all his. I started counting his kindnesses like IOUs. Every nice gesture meant I owed him silence, gratitude, loyalty. One night he told me, "You're not like other women." "What do you mean?" I asked. "You don't nag, you don't run your mouth, you know how to be still." I laughed. I don't know why. It just escaped. A short, sharp sound. He went quiet. I stopped laughing. He turned the TV back on. I went to the bathroom and stared at myself in the mirror. My face looked thinner, my eyes duller. I pulled off the bracelet. Underneath was a faint yellow-green mark, fading. I stared at it like it was someone else's skin. Later that night, I put the bracelet back on. Rick noticed and smiled. "Looks good on you," he said. I nodded. I had nothing left to say. He never chained me to the floor. He didn't have to. He built the walls inside me. The more he loved me, the smaller the world got, until it only fit him. The hospital always smelled the same, like bleach, metal, and something faintly sweet that made my stomach twist. I'd been there before, twice, both times with stories Rick rehearsed for me in the car. Say you slipped on the porch. Say you twisted wrong doing laundry. Say you fainted. This time, he didn't give me a script. He didn't have to. My ribs were already throbbing, and my vision was already blurring around the edges. We walked through the automatic doors side by side, but it didn't feel like walking. It felt like being escorted. Rick kept one hand on the small of my back, the same spot he'd pressed earlier when he told me I needed to watch my mouth. His thumb dug into the bruise blooming beneath my shirt. I hid the wince with a breath. "Stay close," he murmured. "I don't want you tripping again." "Again." He said it loud enough for the receptionist to hear. She smiled politely, typing something into her computer. I watched her eyes flick up toward me. She noticed the way I was holding my side. She noticed the stiffness in my walk. But she didn't say anything. People rarely do. We sat in the waiting area. Rick filled out the clipboard, scribbling fast, unchecked. Reason for visit, fall. Pain level, moderate. Medication, none. I sat quietly. My vision pulsed every few seconds like a dimming light. A nurse walked in. T. Caldwell. I recognized her before she recognized me. She called my name gently, asked me to follow. Rick stood with me. "I'll help her walk," he said. "Of course," she replied, her tone neutral. We stepped into the hallway. Bright lights, footsteps, machines beeping. A dome camera blinked red above us, watching, recording. Rick kept his arm around me. To anyone else, it looked like support. To me, it looked like a leash. "You okay?" he asked. His voice sounded warm, soft, a comfort he didn't earn. I didn't answer. The nurse watched us walk, really watched. Her eyes dropped to the way my shoulder curled inward, the way Rick steered me, the way my fingers trembled when his grip tightened. She led us to a small room on the left, and Rick helped me onto the bed like I was made of glass. "She fell while cleaning," he said. "She's always rushing." "Is that right?" the nurse asked, looking at me. I opened my mouth, but Rick answered first. "She's clumsy. Always has been." I shut my mouth. The nurse cleaned a cut above my eyebrow. She noted the swelling on my ribs. "Does it hurt when I press here?" she asked. I nodded. "Can you tell me what happened?" she continued, eyes on mine. I nodded again, but I didn't speak. Rick rested his hand on my shoulder, lightly, too lightly. Anyone else might call it tenderness. I felt the warning in it. The nurse's expression didn't change, but something in her posture did a subtle shift, like she was memorizing the distance between us. She stepped out to get supplies. Rick leaned in close. "Don't make this complicated," he whispered. "We'll be out of here soon." I stared at the wall. When the nurse returned, she handed me a small ice pack and said, "I'll need her to step into the hallway for a moment." "Privacy." "Why?" Rick asked. "Protocol," she replied. "Just a minute." He hesitated, but he stepped outside. Not far, just enough to keep me in sight through the window. The nurse lowered her voice. "Do you feel safe at home?" My throat tightened. I swallowed. "Yes," I said. The lie felt smaller than the truth. "Do you want him in the room with you right now?" "It's fine," I murmured. She didn't believe me. I could see it in the way her jaw shifted. She tapped her pen against the clipboard once, twice, like she was deciding something. Rick re-entered before she could say another word. "All good?" he asked. "We're going to take her down for x-rays," the nurse said, her voice steady. "Just to be sure," Rick nodded. "I'll walk with her." "Of course," she said, but her eyes flicked upward toward the camera. She led us through another hallway, brighter, busier. A doctor passed by, glancing at my face. A tech pushed a wheelchair past us. The nurse slowed her pace, pretending to check something on her tablet. She let Rick move a few steps ahead. Then she leaned toward me. "Someone's watching the footage," she whispered. "Just so you know." My heart kicked against my ribs. "What footage?" I asked quietly. "This hallway," she said. The camera blinked red again above us. For the first time in a long time, I felt something like air. Not freedom, but space. Space for something to fit beside fear. She straightened before Rick turned back, plastering a polite smile. "You doing okay?" he asked her. "Just fine," she replied. We reached the imaging area. The nurse handed me off to another tech, but before leaving, she met my eyes and held them for half a second too long. A silent message, a promise, a warning. Rick wrapped an arm around my shoulders as we waited, humming under his breath, pretending to soothe me. "We'll be home soon," he whispered. I looked at the camera. I didn't smile this time. I didn't hide the pain. The lens stared back, unblinking. I wanted it to see me, all of me. Not the version Rick curated, not the version he spoke for, the truth, the raw, trembling truth. And in that long hallway, under fluorescent lights and behind the cold, indifferent eye of hospital surveillance, Nurse Caldwell saw something I couldn't hide. A single flinch. A tiny, involuntary movement. Enough to pull the mask off everything. A stranger saw me break before I had the courage to admit I was already broken. Someone finally saw the truth, and it wasn't me who showed it. The X-ray room was colder than the hallway. Not by much. Just enough to make my skin tighten as the tech positioned me under the machine. Rick sat in the corner, tapping his foot, pretending to be worried. He wasn't watching me. He was watching the room, watching who could see him, watching how he looked. That was always his talent. He knew exactly when to perform. The tech asked him to step back so he didn't contaminate the radiation area. He did, smiling, hands raised like he was harmless. I lay still while the machine buzzed overhead. Each rotation sent a dull ache down my side. The tech helped me up afterward. "The doctor will look at these soon," he said. "Just hang tight." Rick walked over as soon as the tech left. "You should have been more careful," he murmured. "You make things harder than they need to be." I didn't reply. Silence was safer. He brushed hair from my forehead, his fingertips grazing, the bruise forming near my temple. "We'll go home soon," he said, as if the word home meant something safe. We were taken back to the small examination room. Nurse Caldwell entered again, holding a clipboard. She closed the door gently behind her. "The doctor wants to take a closer look at your injuries," she said. We'll need to document everything for the record. Rick nodded, too quickly. Of course, whatever you need. His voice dripped concern. Tiana didn't look at him. She looked at me. She asked me to lift my shirt slightly so she could examine the bruising on my ribs. The pain sharpened as I raised my arm. I winced. She noted it. She took her time, documenting each mark, her touch gentle, deliberate. Any nausea? She asked. Headaches? Dizziness? Some, I whispered. She wrote it down. She asked, Did you fall straight down, or did you twist as you fell? Before I could speak, Rick answered. She twisted. She always twists. Tiana didn't acknowledge him. She kept her eyes on me. Danielle? She asked. It was the first time she'd said my name. I hesitated. The truth touched the back of my throat. Fragile, small. I don't remember, I said. Rick relaxed. The nurse didn't. She reached into her folder and pulled out a form. A real document. Official. With printed lines and check boxes and a barcode at the top. We have to complete an ER intake chart, she said. Standard procedure. She placed it on the counter. I saw the header before she flipped it toward herself. Greenville Regional Hospital Emergency Intake. File #WATWO 7149. She filled it out slowly, reading each line aloud as she wrote, like she wanted me to hear it, really hear it. Patient presents with bruising on left rib area, contusions along cheekbone, shallow laceration above eyebrow. Her pen glided across the page. Rick paced behind her, restless. Is all this necessary? He asked. She's fine. She just needs rest. This is protocol, she replied, calm but firm. He didn't like that. He stepped closer to her. Look, I know she looks bad, but she's clumsy. That's all. Tiana turned to face him. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't step back. Sir, please take a seat. It wasn't a request. Rick froze. I watched it happen, the tiny shift in power he wasn't used to. Eventually, he sat, arms crossed, jaw tight enough to crack teeth. She continued examining me. When she gently touched the bruise beneath my ribs, I sucked in a breath. That hurts? She asked. I nodded. Scale of 1 to 10? 7, I whispered. She wrote it down. She was careful, professional. But I could feel something else beneath the routine, the certainty that she didn't believe the story. When she finished, she handed the file to the doctor who entered moments later. He skimmed it, nodding. We'll run a few more tests, he said. Just precaution. Rick exhaled dramatically. Is this all really necessary? The doctor glanced at him. Yes. Rick clenched his jaw. The nurse stepped out with the doctor, and for a moment, it was just me and him. He didn't speak. He just stared. Not with anger, not with sadness, with calculation. You're making them suspicious, he whispered. I blinked. I haven't said anything. You didn't need to. He stood, leaned over me, adjusting the blanket on my lap like he was caring for me. You look guilty. Stop looking guilty. I held my breath until he stepped back. When the nurse returned, she had a printed copy of the intake. She set it on the counter but angled it toward me, not him. Like she wanted me to memorize it. Like she knew someone someday might need it. I read the lines upside down. Patient name, Danielle Ruiz. Admission date, February 14, 9:14 p.m. Condition noted. Contusions, lacerations, possible rib fracture. File #WATWO 7149. Evidence. Real evidence. Not a photo hidden in a groceries folder. Not a bruise I covered with makeup. Actual paperwork. Actual ink. Actual truth. She slipped it into a manila folder. She didn't close it all the way. A small choice. Maybe an invitation. Rick stood, pretending to stretch. We're almost done, right? Soon, she replied. He stepped out to make a call. The door clicked shut. For the first time that night, the room felt like it had air. I didn't move. Tiana picked up the folder and held it against her chest. If you ever need this, she said quietly, ask for me. I swallowed. Hard. I can't, I whispered. Not yet. She nodded. She didn't argue. Just know it exists, she said. The record exists. Her eyes were soft but steady. She wasn't trying to save me. She was giving me a place to land. Rick returned before I could respond. He walked in smiling like nothing had happened. Ready to take my girl home? He asked loudly. The nurse stepped back, mask of professionalism back in place. He wrapped an arm around my shoulders. I didn't flinch this time, not because it didn't hurt, but because it did. And he needed people to believe it didn't. The doctor returned and said the x-rays didn't show broken ribs, just significant bruising. Rick nodded like he'd been proven right. "Told you," he said. The doctor ignored him. "She needs rest. Ice. No lifting." "I'll take care of her," Rick said. He always said that. The nurse stood behind the doctor, folder still in her hands. She looked at me. Just once, long enough for me to understand she wasn't letting this go. We left the room. The hallway felt longer this time. The camera blinked overhead, steady, silent. Rick squeezed my shoulder as he guided me forward. "Say thank you," he murmured. I turned back. The nurse stood at the doorway, arms crossed over the folder. "Thank you," I said. And I meant it, not for the care, not for the ice, for the file, the record, the truth someone finally wrote down. We walked out of the hospital. The cold air hit my face like a slap. Rick whispered, "You did good." But as we crossed the parking lot, something inside me shifted. Not big, not loud. A tiny crack, a voice barely formed. The knowledge that somewhere inside that building, in a folder with my name and a number, evidence existed that he didn't own the story anymore. Truth lives quietly on paper long before anyone speaks it aloud. And now, for the first time, the truth had a file number, and I wasn't the one who wrote it. We drove home in silence. Rick didn't play music, didn't hum like he usually did when he thought things were back in place. His fingers tapped the steering wheel, but there was no rhythm, just static movement, his body buzzing with questions he didn't dare ask yet. I stared out the window, counting the streetlights like they were lifelines. At home, he unlocked the door and let me in first, that old Southern gentleman routine back in place. I walked to the couch and sat gingerly, pressing the ice pack to my ribs. He stood in the doorway watching me. "You did good in there," he said finally. I didn't answer. He walked to the kitchen and opened a beer. They bought it. "That nurse, though," she asked a lot of questions. He sipped, studying me. "You think she's going to make a report?" I looked up. "I don't know." "Well, if she does, that's just going to bring people into our lives we don't need." He drained the rest of the bottle. "You hate drama, right?" "Right," I said. My voice didn't shake. That surprised me. "Then let's just forget tonight happened." He tossed the empty bottle in the trash and went upstairs without another word. I stayed downstairs. The lights were too bright, but I didn't turn them off. I held the ice pack until it melted. In the morning he acted like nothing had happened, made coffee, kissed my forehead, asked if I wanted waffles. I said no. "Suit yourself," he said. He danced around the kitchen like we were on vacation. When he left for work, I stood in the living room holding the bracelet he'd given me weeks ago. It still smelled like his cologne. I dropped it in the trash. Then I dug it back out, wrapped it in a napkin, and shoved it in a drawer. Proof. Not of what he did, but of how he covered it. I cleaned the house like normal, washed dishes, made the bed, vacuumed the hallway, even though it didn't need it. Doing normal things made me feel less like a body waiting to be hit. Around noon, the doorbell rang. I froze. No one ever came by unannounced. I looked through the peephole. It was a woman, brown ponytail, hospital badge on her coat. My heart started racing. I opened the door a crack. "Danielle?" she asked. I nodded. "Hi," she said. "I'm not here officially. I just wanted to check in. Are you allowed to do that?" I asked. "Not really," she smiled. But I had a break and was in the area. She handed me a folded piece of paper. "If you ever need someone to talk to outside of charts and clipboards, that's my number." I took it. "I don't know what you think you saw," I began. "I didn't see anything," she interrupted. "But I remember how it feels, that's all." I blinked. "You?" She didn't elaborate, just smiled, nodded, and turned to leave. I closed the door and locked it. Then I sat on the floor for a long time, holding the paper like it might catch fire. I didn't call. I didn't throw it away either. That night, Rick came home with takeout, pad thai and spring rolls, my favorite. He set it on the table, kissed my cheek, and said, "Let's eat. We deserve a night off." I smiled and sat. We ate in silence. He asked how I was feeling. I said better. He said, "That's my girl." He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. His fingers were warm, steady, trained. After dinner, he queued up a movie and pulled me onto the couch. We watched something with explosions and fast cars. I pretended to care. When the credits rolled, he pulled me into him. "I don't want to fight anymore," he said. "I don't like when we argue." "Me neither," I said. "Let's keep things smooth," he murmured. "Easy, no stress." That word again. I nodded. He kissed the top of my head and turned off the light. We went to bed. I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, counting seconds. That's how I knew it was 2:47 a.m. when I made my decision. Not a big one, not even dangerous, just a small act. I got up, walked downstairs, and pulled the manila envelope from the drawer. The hospital file. File hashed WATWO7149. I opened it and stared at the paper. My name, my injury, my pain written down like it was real, like it mattered. I didn't take a picture of it. I didn't make a copy. I just read it until I had it memorized. Then I slipped it back into the drawer and went back upstairs. The next day, I wore jeans that covered the bruise. I put on makeup to hide the cut. I smiled at Rick and said, "Want me to make breakfast?" He grinned. "There's my girl." I made eggs and toast. I sat across from him and listened to him rant about the idiots at work. I nodded in all the right places. Inside, I repeated the intake number like a prayer. 227149. That night, I asked him what his schedule looked like next week. He looked suspicious. "Why?" "I want to plan something nice," I said. "Just us." He smiled. "I like that." I kissed his cheek. "Good." I cleaned the dishes slowly that night, letting the water run over my hands too long. My skin went red, but I didn't feel it. I was too busy thinking, planning, rehearsing. Not escape, just a break. A test. The next morning, I called in sick to the diner. I hadn't been scheduled, but I wanted the excuse on record. I spent the day gathering little things, my social security card, old tax forms, copies of my pay stubs. I didn't pack. That would have been too obvious. But I created a folder on a USB drive and labeled it Recipes. Inside, I placed scans of everything: the intake form, photos of the bruises, screenshots of text messages, voice memos I'd recorded late at night when Rick was snoring and I couldn't sleep. All of it. I labeled each file by date and category. Then I encrypted the drive and slid it into a book hollowed out in the spine. I shelved it between two cookbooks in the kitchen. Rick would never notice. He didn't cook. That night, I said I had a headache. He offered to rub my shoulders. I said no. He didn't push. He watched TV while I sat beside him, pretending not to count the hours. "Just past midnight," I whispered. "I love you." He looked over, surprised. "I love you too." I smiled. "Thanks for taking care of me." He smiled back. "Always." I turned my face into the pillow and let the tears slide into the cotton quietly. It wasn't a goodbye. Not yet. But it was the beginning of one. Before you leave, sometimes you have to pretend to stay just long enough to make your exit real. I hadn't left yet, but the file was hidden, the story recorded, and this time, it had my name on it. Rick noticed something had shifted. He didn't say it, but I saw it in the way he watched me. He became quieter, more calculating. He started texting me during work again. "Where are you now?" "Send a pic. You forgot to reply." Always framed like concern. I replied, "Always." I smiled in every photo. One night, he told me he might change his work schedule. "Why?" I asked. "Just thinking I need to be home more," he said. "We've been out of sync." I nodded. I didn't argue, but the next day, I made a backup of the USB drive. I stored it in my locker at work, behind a box of tampons no one ever touched. That afternoon, I told Tara I was sorry for disappearing. She didn't ask questions. She just hugged me. When she stepped back, she pressed something into my hand. "A cheap burner phone, in case you ever need a line that's clean," she said. I didn't ask how she knew. I just nodded and slipped it into my apron pocket. That night, I deleted her texts from my main phone. Rick grilled steaks and poured wine. "To us," he said. "To new beginnings." I toasted and smiled. Then I excused myself to the bathroom and threw up everything I'd eaten. Not from fear, from the weight of pretending. At midnight, while Rick slept, I opened the drawer with the hospital file and touched the envelope just to feel it. The next week passed in rituals. I cleaned, I cooked, I answered when he called. I laughed when he told jokes. I stopped wearing eyeliner. I wore his favorite hoodie around the house. I posted photos of our dinner on Instagram. Everything looked normal, better than normal. Like love. That was the trick, paint the prison gold and no one asks what it costs to stay. Then came the slip. A small one. A moment. It was Tuesday. Rick came home angry. Something about a payment being delayed at work. He slammed the door, dropped his keys, paced. Useless, he muttered. All of them. I stayed silent. I brought him water. He knocked it off the table. I'm talking to you, he snapped. I didn't flinch. That made him angrier. Say something. I'm sorry, I said. That's all you ever say, he spat. You think you're better than me? No. You think I don't see it? The way you act now, like you've got secrets. I froze. I don't. Liar. His hand shot out. It didn't hit me. It hit the wall behind me. A picture frame fell. Glass shattered. I didn't move. I couldn't. He stepped back, breathing heavy. You make me crazy, he said. You know that, right? I nodded. I'm sorry. He stared at me for a long time. Then he picked up the broken frame, swept the glass into a pile and said, It's fine. Let's forget it. That night, I updated the hidden folder. I added a new file, audio recorded on the burner phone. It wasn't much, just the yelling, the crash, my voice saying I was sorry. Not enough for court, but enough for memory. Enough for someone to understand, if I vanished. I started keeping a go bag in my trunk. Just a change of clothes, some cash, and a printed copy of the intake report. It felt dramatic. It also felt necessary. I didn't plan to use it. I just needed to know it was there. Like a parachute. Like air. A few days later, I stopped by the hospital on my lunch break. Not for treatment, just to sit. I didn't even check in. I just walked through the lobby, past the vending machines, past the chapel, until I saw the nurses' station. Tiana wasn't there. I didn't expect her to be. But I sat anyway, pretending to scroll my phone. I watched the cameras blink. I watched the hallway fill and empty. After 20 minutes, I left. That night, Rick said he got a call from an old friend, thinking of going on a weekend trip. Just the guys, he said. You okay with that? I smiled. Of course. He seemed surprised. You sure? Yeah, I said. You deserve a break. He studied me. You're not trying to get rid of me, are you? I laughed. No, just tired of seeing you stressed. He nodded slowly. You've been better lately. I've been trying. Good. That weekend, he packed a duffel bag and drove off with two buddies I didn't know well. I waited an hour. Then I got in my car and drove to a storage unit I'd rented under a name close enough to mine to pass Danielle R. Louis. I used cash. I moved the backup USB there. I printed more photos. I wrote a letter. Just one page. If anything happens to me, here's what you need to know. I signed it, sealed it, and placed it in a fireproof envelope. Then I left. When I got home, I cleaned again. I watched the clock. He wouldn't be back until Sunday. I had 2 nights. I didn't run. I wasn't ready. But I rehearsed. I went through the steps in my head. If he hits me again, I leave. If he breaks something, I leave. If he touches my phone, I leave. And this time, it wasn't a maybe. It was a list. A law I wrote for myself. Sunday came. He returned smelling like beer and barbecue. Miss me? He asked. I hugged him. Of course. That night, he passed out early. I lay beside him staring at the ceiling. I didn't touch the drawer. I didn't update the folder. I didn't need to. I already knew where it all was, and that meant he didn't own the story anymore. My body stayed, but my truth had already left the house. He came home like nothing happened, but I'd already rehearsed the goodbye. Rick always came home loud. Even when he tried to be quiet, he wasn't. He slammed the door, rattled his keys, kicked off his boots like the house offended him. That night was no different, except something in him felt sharper, faster, like he'd been holding a storm in his teeth all day and finally let it loose inside our walls. I was at the kitchen table sorting old receipts, pretending to be busy. He walked in, tossed his jacket over a chair, and stared at me too long. You didn't pick up when I called, he said. I was in the shower, I replied. You couldn't answer after? I didn't hear the notification. His jaw twitched. You always hear it. I didn't look up. That was my mistake. He stepped closer. Look at me. I forced myself to lift my eyes. He searched my face like he was looking for a lie to punish. "You've been different," he said slowly. "Distant. Just tired," I whispered. "From what? You barely work anymore." A coldness crawled into my chest. "I didn't mean don't." His hand hit the table, flat and sudden. Not on me, not yet, but close enough that the receipts fluttered like frightened birds. "I'm trying," I said. "Really?" "Trying what? Trying to piss me off? Trying to hide things?" "I'm not hiding anything. Liar." The word hit harder than his hand ever had, because he meant it. He stepped back and started pacing. That was worse than yelling. Yelling had edges, predictable ones. Pacing was the storm-building pressure. "You think I don't see it?" he said. "The way you walk around like you've got some secret life in your head?" I stayed still. "You're imagining things," I said softly. "Am I?" He stopped pacing and pushed the receipts off the table in one sweep. They scattered across the floor like broken truth. "You can't even look at me anymore," he hissed. "Yes, I can," I said, and forced myself to meet his eyes. He stepped in close, too close, and lowered his voice. "Say you love me." I swallowed. "I love you. Say it like you mean it." "I love you." His eyes narrowed. "You used to say it differently." "People change," I whispered. His hand twitched. For a second, I thought that was it, that the storm would finally break open on my skin. But instead, he let out a laugh that had nothing to do with humor. "You're pathetic at lying," he said. "Always have been." He grabbed his keys. "I need air. Don't go anywhere." He slammed the door so hard the picture frames rattled. I waited 10 minutes, then 20. Then I picked up the receipts with trembling hands. My ribs pulsed with the memory of past nights. I felt the USB drive hidden in the bookshelf calling to me like a heartbeat. I didn't touch it. Not yet. I went upstairs. I changed into jeans and a sweatshirt. My hands shook so badly I had to redo the zipper twice. When I looked in the mirror, my face didn't look scared. It looked empty. Like I'd been hollowed out. I didn't want to leave that night. I wasn't ready, but I knew something had shifted. I went downstairs again. I sat on the couch. I waited. It took him 40 minutes to return. I heard the car door slam, footsteps, the jingle of keys, the click of the lock. When the door opened, I braced. He was breathing hard, like he'd run or fought or drank too much. He walked toward me slow, too slow. "You're still here?" he said. "Of course," I replied. He sat beside me, not touching me, but close enough that I could smell whiskey on his breath. "I don't want to lose you," he murmured. "You're the only thing that keeps me sane." I looked at his hands, steady, resting on his knees. Hands that had held me, hurt me, held me again after hurting me. "I'm not going anywhere," I said. I didn't know if it was true. I just knew it was the sentence that would keep me safe for the next 10 seconds. He leaned back into the couch cushions. "Tell me what you did today," he said. "I cleaned. I cooked. I organized the hallway closet. You sound rehearsed. I'm just tired." He turned his head toward me, expression softening. "I hate when we fight." "Me too. Come here," he said. I froze. He reached for me gently, fingertips brushing my wrist. "Just sit closer," he whispered, as if tenderness could erase the crack in the wall behind his voice. I leaned in an inch, then another, his arm wrapped around me. He exhaled. "See? This is better," he said. "We're better like this." I nodded. My ribs hurt under the weight of his arm. My throat burned with words I couldn't say. His breathing slowed. After several minutes, he whispered, "You forgive me, right?" I hesitated. Barely. But he felt it. He always felt it. His body went rigid. "Do you forgive me?" he repeated. "Yes," I said quickly. "Yes." His muscles relaxed. "Good." He kissed the top of my head, slow and deliberate. "We'll fix this," he murmured. "You and me." His fingers traced my arm like an apology. But apologies don't linger the way his touch did, heavy, possessive, a reminder more than a comfort. When he finally let go and went upstairs to shower, my body slumped like it had been held up by fear alone. I didn't move for a while, not until I heard the water running. Then I stood. I walked to the kitchen drawer. I pulled out the hospital file. The intake record, file #WO 7149. I stared at the date, the time, the injuries listed neatly in black ink, the truth written without shaking hands. I heard the shower stop upstairs. I placed the file back in the drawer and closed it softly. I sat on the couch again. When he came downstairs, hair damp, shirt off, he looked calmer. "Come to bed," he said. I nodded. I followed. I lay beside him in the dark, his breath slow and steady, his arm draped across me like a claim. And somewhere between his inhale and exhale, I realized something I hadn't before. I wasn't afraid of leaving him. I was afraid of what staying would turn me into. Fear doesn't disappear when you're ready to leave. It disappears when you're no longer willing to stay. Guys. And that night, lying beside the man who broke me, something inside me finally snapped, but this time, it wasn't my body. Detective Karen Moreno didn't look like someone you could lie to. She showed up at the diner on a Wednesday afternoon, when the place smelled like burnt bacon and cheap syrup, and the lunch rush had thinned into a few truckers nursing refills. She walked in with a folder tucked under her arm, her blouse plain, her eyes sharp enough to cut through walls. I was wiping down the counter when she said my name, quiet, steady, like she already knew the answer. "Danielle Ruiz?" I froze, the cloth still in my hand. "Yes?" "I'm Detective Moreno. I'd like to ask you a few questions if that's all right." My throat went tight. "About what?" "About your visit to Greenville Regional Hospital." My pulse hammered. I glanced at my manager, who nodded absently, assuming it was something medical insurance, billing, anything normal. Nothing about me ever looked like an emergency from the outside. Karen gestured toward a corner booth. I followed, my legs unsteady. She sat across from me and opened the folder, not dramatically, just enough that the manila edges brushed the table. "This is going to sound forward," she said, "but I need you to answer honestly. Is someone hurting you at home?" My entire body stilled. Every defense I'd built over the years rose like walls. Denial, confusion, humor, silence. I picked silence. She didn't rush. She didn't fill the void. She let it sit there between us, heavy and loud. Then she slid a paper across the table, the hospital intake form. I recognized the lines instantly. File #WATWO7149. My injuries, my date, my time, my pain printed neatly in ink. Nurse Caldwell submitted a concern report. Karen said, "She believes the injuries were not consistent with a fall. She saw you flinch." My breath caught. The hallway camera blinked in my memory. Rick's hands, my silence. My ribs aching under fluorescent light. "I can't," I whispered. "Not yet. Not yet," she repeated quietly, like she was recording the words in her mind. "Can you tell me why?" He's not always like that." She didn't roll her eyes, didn't sigh. She nodded once. "Most aren't. All the time." My hands shook under the table. She noticed. "I'm not here to force you," she said. "I'm here to document. That's it. Facts, dates, patterns." She opened the folder wider. Inside were printed screenshots, my bruises, the ones I thought were hidden in the groceries folder. My stomach dropped. "The hospital system captures metadata when images sync to their network," she explained. "Your phone connected to their Wi-Fi. Some of your older images pinged in the diagnostic cache." I stared, stunned. Technology had become the witness I never dared ask for. "We don't have access to your personal phone," she continued, "but the cached thumbnails provided timestamps. They line up with past visits you didn't report." My throat tightened. "Does he know?" I whispered. "No, and he won't. Not from us." She gave me time to breathe. I didn't. My lungs felt locked. "Danielle," she said softly, "I'm going to ask one question, and you only need to answer yes or no." I nodded. "Are you afraid he'll kill you?" The diner noise faded into a low hum, forks clinking, coffee pouring, someone laughing too loudly at something unfunny. My world narrowed into that single question. My ribs ached as if they remembered every moment. "Yes," I whispered. Not loud, not brave, just true. Karen didn't react like I'd confessed something shocking. She nodded slowly, carefully, then reached into her folder and pulled out a small card. "This is my direct number. My desk and personal line are synced. If you call, leave the phone where he can't hear. Say your name and the word green light. That's all. We'll know what to do." "What happens if I call?" "We intervene." My hands trembled so visibly I tucked them under my thighs. "What if he finds out I talked to you?" "He won't," she said firmly. "I won't leave anything behind." Not even a receipt for the coffee I didn't order. She closed the folder, slid everything back inside, and stood. "Before I go," she added, "I want you to hear something." She leaned in slightly. "Men like him rely on silence. Not just yours, everyone's." I swallowed hard. "I don't know if I'm ready." "You don't have to be ready," she said. "You just have to be alive when you decide." She left, just walked out the door as quietly as she came. I stood there long after she was gone, staring at the empty seat, the faint impression her notebook had left on the vinyl. When I finally returned to the counter, Tara glanced up. "Everything okay?" she asked. I nodded. The lie felt heavy. After work, I drove home slowly, every streetlight dragging out the thought spiraling louder in my head. Someone believed me before I believed myself. When I pulled into the driveway, Rick was waiting on the porch, arms crossed. "Where were you?" he asked. "Work ran late," I said. He studied me, eyes sharp. "Anyone come by?" "No." He nodded like he wanted to believe it, like he needed to. Inside he made dinner, chicken and rice. He poured me a glass of water and watched me drink it. He asked about my day. I answered. He touched my hand and said, "We're doing better, right?" My heart hammered, but my voice stayed steady. "Yeah," I said. "We are." He smiled and kissed me lightly. "Good," but as he turned away, I slipped the detective's card deeper into the waistband of my jeans, hidden under my shirt, pressed against my hip bone like a secret pulse. That night, lying beside him, I realized something terrifying and freeing all at once. I had someone on the outside now, someone watching, someone waiting, someone who believed the truth I hadn't dared speak. And it didn't matter that he was inches from me, or that his breath warmed my shoulder, or that his arm draped across me like a weight. I wasn't trapped alone anymore. Sometimes the first escape isn't leaving the house, it's letting the truth enter it. And now the truth had a person, a badge, and my name, which meant for the first time, he wasn't the only one writing the story. The morning it happened didn't start like a disaster. It started like any other day, quiet, pale, light leaking through the blinds, the smell of coffee drifting from the kitchen. Rick was humming. That was the first sign something was wrong. He only hummed when he was trying to look harmless. "Morning, baby," he said when I walked in. He kissed my cheek lightly, too lightly, controlled, practiced. I made breakfast. I nodded, sitting at the table. My ribs ached from sleeping wrong, or from stress, or from the memory of his arm pressing down on them the night before. He slid a plate toward me. Eggs, toast, fruit, too perfect. My stomach tightened. I pushed the food around with my fork. "Long day ahead," he said, sipping his coffee. "But I've been thinking, we should take a trip, just us, somewhere quiet." My chest froze. "A trip?" "Yeah," he said. "You seem tense. I want to get you away from all this." He said it gently, but his eyes were cold. Too cold. That was the moment I felt it deep, bone-level certainty. If I left the house with him today, I wouldn't come back. I excused myself to the bathroom and shut the door. My hands shook as I leaned over the sink. I could hear him moving in the kitchen, opening drawers, closing them, humming again. I pulled Detective Moreno's card from the waistband of my jeans where I'd been hiding it for days. I stared at the number. I whispered the safe word. "Green light." I dialed. She answered on the second ring. "Say your name," she said. "Danielle." I breathed. "He wants to take me somewhere. I think he's planning something." "Are you in immediate danger?" I stared at my reflection, my pale face, the small cut near my eye, the bruise fading on my ribs. "Yes. Leave the house," she said. "Now. Do not confront him. Do not pack anything. Walk out the door and keep walking until you're out of sight. Units are 2 minutes out." "I can't." "You can," she said. "I'm with you. Leave. Now." I hung up. My heart roared in my ears. I opened the bathroom door. Rick was standing at the kitchen counter with his back turned, cutting fruit. His knife glinted under the light. "Everything okay?" he asked without looking up. "Yeah," I said softly. "I'm just gonna go check the mail." "Now?" "I forgot yesterday," he hummed. "Don't be long." I slipped on my shoes. My hands were shaking so badly I had to steady myself against the wall. I opened the front door. I walked out. I didn't run. Running would have made noise. Running would have told him everything. I walked down the steps, down the driveway, past the mailbox without touching it. My breathing got tighter with every footstep. My legs felt like they were full of sand. When I reached the sidewalk, I heard the door open behind me. "Danielle?" Rick called out. My heart stopped. I kept walking. "Where are you going?" he demanded. I didn't turn around. If I turned around, I'd crumble. "Danielle!" he barked. I walked faster. Then sirens. Not loud, not wailing, just short bursts. Enough to signal. 2 unmarked cars pulled onto our street. Rick stopped at the porch steps. Detective Moreno stepped out of the first car, her presence sharp, controlled, unshakable. "Rick Ruiz?" she called. "We need to speak with you." His eyes darted from her to me. "What's going on?" he shouted. "Danielle? What did you do?" I didn't answer. I kept walking until I reached Moreno's side. She positioned herself between us like a wall. Officers approached him. Calm, steady, forming a triangle. "There's been a report filed," Moreno said. "We need you to come with us for questioning." "A report? What report? She's lying," he yelled, pointing at me. "She's crazy. She's trying to ruin my life." The neighbors came outside. Doors cracked open. Curtains shifted. Eyes appeared. Witnesses, the thing he hated most. "Sir," one officer said, "please step back." "This is bullshit," Rick shouted. "She bruises easy. She's clumsy. She does this to herself." Moreno didn't flinch. "We have medical documentation, timestamps, witness statements, and audio evidence." His face changed. He stepped toward me fast. Too fast. Moreno moved quicker. "Don't," she warned. Officer Reed grabbed his arm. "Sir, stop." He jerked away. "She's my wife." "And she's safe now," Moreno said. Those words split something inside him. He lunged. Officers restrained him. He shouted at them, at me, at the world. "You're nothing without me," he screamed. "You think anyone will believe you?" I stood still, watching the man who'd broken me unravel in front of the whole street. His face red, his voice cracking not from pain, but from losing control. They cuffed him. He kept yelling. Not words anymore. Just noise. Raw, ugly noise. I didn't cry. I didn't tremble. I just stood there, breathing, as if learning how for the first time. They put him in the car. The moment the door shut, the world exhaled. Detective Moreno turned to me. "You're safe now," she said. I swallowed hard. "What happens now?" "A judge will review the report today. We're requesting an emergency protective order. You won't have to see him. And after?" "After," she said gently, "you get your life back." Hours later, I sat in a courtroom smaller than I expected, wooden benches polished smooth with age. Rick was brought in, handcuffed, eyes wild. He looked at me the whole time. The judge reviewed the file, the hospital records, the police statements, the digital evidence. When he spoke, his voice was steady, unshakable. "Emergency protective order granted. Effective immediately. Defendant is barred from contact or proximity for 18 months. Further review pending." Rick's face crumpled not with remorse, but with disbelief, as if the universe had betrayed him, as if justice was a personal insult. A single tear slid down his cheek. It didn't make him soft. It made him small. The coldest man I ever knew cried in front of a judge, and as his world cracked open, mine finally began to breathe. I didn't go back to the house. Not that day. Not ever. When the officers drove me away, the world outside the window looked too bright, too clean, like someone had wiped the sky down with bleach. I sat in the back seat clutching nothing, no bag, no clothes, no keepsakes. Just the clothes on my back and a thin court document that said I mattered. Greenville blurred past. The diner, the gas station, the park where we once picnicked because Rick said being outdoors would fix my attitude. We drove right by it. I didn't look away. At the station, they took my statement, officially details I had rehearsed in my mind for months, truths I had swallowed until they tasted familiar. Detective Moreno sat beside me the entire time, tapping her pen against her folder every time I hesitated, not to rush me, but to remind me she wasn't leaving. When they finished, she said, "We can take you to a shelter or to a hotel. Your choice." "A hotel," I whispered. "I just need to be alone." She didn't question it. She walked me outside, opened the passenger door of her unmarked car, and said softly, You did this. The drive to the hotel felt like floating. My body was buzzing, but my mind was quiet in a way I didn't recognize. I checked in with a fake name they'd prepared. I locked the door behind me. I sat on the bed. For the first time in years, I heard nothing. No footsteps, no pacing, no humming, no controlled breaths in the dark. Silence. But real silence, the kind that feels like a wound and a cure. I lay back, shoes still on, staring at the ceiling. My ribs pulsed, but I didn't brace for the next hit. There wasn't going to be one. I didn't know what to do with that thought. I cried. Not the quiet, hidden tears I used to let slip into pillows. This cry came from somewhere deep, somewhere bruised and buried. It didn't sound like weakness. It sounded like someone being unburied. When it finally stopped, I sat up and pulled the court document from my pocket. Protective order. 18 months. 18 months of space to relearn my own name. I whispered it out loud. Danielle. It didn't feel foreign anymore. I slept for 14 hours straight. When I woke, sunlight hit the curtains and spilled across the bed like a warm hand. I stretched. My muscles screamed, but nothing hurt the way it used to. I showered slowly, letting hot water run over every part of my body he had claimed. I washed my hair twice, then again, like I could rinse out every lie I had repeated. I looked in the mirror. My face looked older, thinner, but real. Mine. I put on the same clothes from the day before. They felt different now, like armor instead of evidence. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, my actual phone, the one they'd retrieved for me. A message from my sister. Hey stranger, call me when you can. I stared at it. I thought about all the times she had asked if I was okay and I'd laughed it off. I thought about Tara giving me the burner phone without asking why. I thought about Nurse Caldwell, documenting the truth I was too scared to say. I thought about Detective Moreno, standing between me and the man who claimed to love me. All these women had formed a bridge beneath me, before I even realized I was falling. I dialed my sister. When she answered, I couldn't speak at first. She said my name over and over until the sound felt like home. I'm safe, I whispered finally. I'm safe now. She exhaled a long, shaky breath I didn't know she'd been holding for years. Then come home, she said. Just come home. Maybe I would. Maybe not yet. I had one thing to do first. I took a rideshare to Greenville Regional Hospital. The same automatic doors opened with that familiar whoosh. The same antiseptic smell clung to the air. I walked down the hallway. The blinking red camera light greeted me like an old witness. Nurse Caldwell was at the desk. When she looked up and saw me, her eyes widened. You're safe, I finished. She stood. Good. Thank you, I said. She shook her head. You did the hard part. No, I said quietly. You saw me. That mattered. She held my gaze, then nodded once. I handed her a small envelope empty except for a handwritten note. I'm okay. Because you didn't look away. She didn't open it while I was there. I didn't need her to. When I walked outside, the air felt warm on my face. The sky looked wider. I took the burner phone from my pocket, the one Tara had given me, and turned it off. I didn't need 2 lifelines anymore. I only needed mine. I walked to a nearby bus stop, sat down, and closed my eyes. People moved around me, strangers with their own worries, their own bruises hidden under jackets and sleeves. I didn't feel invisible among them. For the first time, I felt like I belonged to the world again, not to one man's anger. A bus pulled up. The driver opened the doors. I didn't get on. Not yet. I wasn't running anymore. I was choosing. I opened my phone and deleted Rick's number, blocked every account tied to him, deleted every photo that ever made me lie to myself. I kept one thing, the picture from the hospital hallway, captured accidentally by a security ping in the report. My face swollen, my eyes tired. Rick's hand gripping my wrist. That photo wasn't shame. It was proof. Proof that I lived. Proof that I survived. Proof that someone saw the truth before I did. I slipped the phone into my pocket and stood. The bus pulled away. I started walking not toward home, not toward a shelter, not toward anyone, just forward. My pace slow, steady, certain. Every step felt like language I had forgotten how to speak. Freedom, syllable by syllable. When I reached the corner, the wind lifted my hair. I breathed in deep. Kindness means nothing if no one sees who you are in the dark. For years he had kept me in the dark. For months, I kept myself there too. But now the world was bright, and I wasn't hiding. Not from him. Not from myself. Not from the truth that took a long, painful road to reach me. I crossed the street. The sun hit my face. I didn't look back. Survival isn't the ending. Learning to live again is. And as I walked into the daylight, it finally felt like mine.